Good morning. Welcome to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. And let me turn this all the way down. Advisory Board meeting, May 10th at 9 a.m. Welcome, everyone. I would like to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll stand if possible, and we'll see a flag on your screen as well as in the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Today's meeting is a combination hybrid meeting, and I believe we actually have an in-person quorum. Very excited about that. Natasha, could you do a roll call, please?
Overman.
Here.
Rosenwasser.
Present.
Abel. Powell.
Here.
Jackson Sims.
Present.
Combs.
Here.
Burton. Lott. Goods. Hollis. O'Donnelly. Nieves. Okay, and I do have Elizabeth Strom and Tyler Hudson as absent for this meeting. They did call ahead and say that they would not be present. And so we'll move on to county staff. Cheryl Howell.
Present.
Nancy Takamori.
Here.
And Commissioner, we do have a quorum.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you all for being here. I know we just heard from Mayor Lott. He is actually calling in shortly, but he hasn't arrived as of yet. Thank you for being here. We do have also time set aside for public comment. I don't have a current list of anyone that did sign in. Natasha, do you know if we have anybody that actually signed up for public comment? We have 15 minutes set aside. Okay, for those of you that couldn't hear that, doesn't appear as though anyone called in. We did have one person indicating that they were going to, but we don't see them on the line. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. And since we have a quorum, I'm very excited. We will be able to approve. And I'm going to ask, unless there's some objection, for approval of the minutes for all the meetings that we have not had, because we've talked about it at the meetings, but we haven't actually been able to approve them. So I'm going to ask for a motion that approves the minutes for December 7th, January 11th, February 8th, and April 12th.
So moved. Sarah Combs.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion.
Rosenwasser.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Natasha, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Overman.
Yes.
Rosenwasser.
Yes.
Abel. Yes. Powell.
Yes.
Jackson Sims.
Yes.
Sarah Combs.
Yes.
And Miss Burton is here. She said yes as well.
And she offered yes. That's
She
awesome.
offered her yes. So motion is carried 7-0.
All right, great. Thank you very, very
And
much.
Commissioner Overman, I'm online as well now.
Excellent. Thank you,
Rick Lott.
Mayor Lott. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. All right. Well, we are making so much progress today. It's amazing.
Hey.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I did want to share with all of you, there's a lot of moving parts in in affordable housing these days. Some opportunities, but also some frustration. And unrelated to really affordable housing, but related to the issue associated with tenants and renters, I wanted to remind everyone that Hillsborough County and unincorporated Hillsborough County does have in place, approved by the Board of County Commission, the Tenant Bill of Rights, which is great. It prohibits discrimination on, okay, we'll start over. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of source of income, and also provides notice of fees and a variety of things. The good news is we've had a couple of outreach meetings with landlords and tenants, and from the feedback we're getting back, it's going well. That is actually only in unincorporated Hillsborough County. But I'm in the process of reaching out to our municipalities. They're looking at the language, and hopefully we'll get some adoption with the same kinds of language so that it's very clear between landlords and tenants what the rules are within overall Hillsborough County. We're not there yet, but that's something that I'm working on to make sure is available. Additionally, unrelated to affordable housing, but related to individuals that need help with paying their rent, there is another bucket of funds available for rental payments and utility payments. It does take both the tenant and the landlord to sign up for the program, so the payments can be made directly to the landlord, and to make sure that the rent is paid. It's for individuals that are under AMI, and we're looking, there is an extension for a lot more months than there previously had been. And we're not seeing the same individuals that had been eligible, maybe still challenged, signing up. We're not seeing a robust sign up as it stands right now, but I want to make sure that people are aware that those resources are there, because what we don't want is people evicted, especially now. So for the lack of being able to pay the rent. And so that was something I wanted to make sure we talked about today, is to, those programs are available. Rent is available for those individuals that have been impacted by COVID and are needing assistance in making sure they don't lose their housing. That's very, very important. With that, I'm going to bring up the legislative update section, and we have Mark Hendrickson on the line to give us an update on what happened with the legislature and where we stand with the Sadowski Trust and the Housing Finance Authority. Mark, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to bring everybody up to date. This was kind of a frustrating session. There was, the classic good news, bad news situation, but let me give an overview. And I sent some documents, a few to Cheryl, and if you could screen share them, it would be great. But if not, if you could just ultimately distribute them to the committee members. There's just a brief summary of what took place and some detail on the budget and the SHIP distributions. But the overview is
Mark, this is Cheryl. I've sent those items over to Mr. Brewer, and if you'll just let him know which one you want shared first.
Okay, the first one would be the one that says Sadowski State and Local Legislative Wrap-Up 2021 in a nutshell.
All right, stand by.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you. I'm not going to read everything that's on here to you. You'll have it. But the basic situation we had this year is that the Senate President and the Speaker announced jointly that they were going to pass legislation that would have permanently reduced the housing trust funds by approximately 70%. And it was a done deal. They had agreed to it. They had no intention of changing that. And they were doing it so that they could move some of the dock stamp money that funds affordable housing to wastewater and to resiliency. We organized a fairly significant, blowback on that. And while they would not back off of their basic premise of taking part of the dock stamps for housing and moving them, they did reduce the percentage so that at the end of the day, housing ended up with approximately about half of what it had up to now from dock stamps going into the trust funds. But the good news part of it is that the legislation guaranteed that beginning July 1st that there would be no more sweeps, and that the housing trust fund appropriation would be a recurring appropriation. And a recurring appropriation means that it automatically goes into the budget each year. And what this resulted in was about $209.2 million for fiscal year 21-22 being appropriated for housing. That amount will go up or down, and most years up and up based upon dock stamp collections. It's not a floor, quote unquote. It'll be dependent upon dock stamp collections, but the trend of dock stamps is up significantly. So our anticipation is we start at 2092 and get larger each year. If you could go to the slide that's the final budget slide. And again, I don't have a lot, there's just a couple here.
All right, stand by.
Hey, Mark, while he's bringing that up,
Yes.
I'd like to ask if say, for example, the 2092 is not spent in that budget year, does it stay in the trust and roll over, or is it?
It should, but it will be spent. I mean, there's.
Oh, yeah, I figured as much, but
yeah,
just in case.
Yeah, it would be as a recurring, but that's this chart shows where the governor, Senate, House final, and also what the final was last year. And you'll see that there's 146.7 of SHIP and 62.5 million going to Florida Housing for Sale and other programs. You'll also see that there's a substantial sweep in there. And you might say, wait a minute, I thought we said the sweeps were over. Well, this is the sweep that's taking place on June 30th. It's of the money that's in the trust funds that was not appropriated, and the no sweep language goes into effect July 1st. So this is the sort of what we anticipate being the last sweep of housing trust fund money and a 2092. The last, and I don't want to put this slide up because it's too hard to read, and you could pull that slide down if you don't mind. We can just go back to the visual. Is that with that appropriation, Hillsborough County will get a little bit over 7.1 million of SHIP, and the city of Tampa will get almost 2.6 million for a total going to the city and county of 9,751,588. That's the current amount that is estimated with that appropriation. So the bottom line here is we got teed up to really have a terrible year when the president and the speaker had the plan that would have really, really gutted housing down to a base of around 140 million. But with the effort that was put forward, we got that to a level of 2092, which actually is the highest appropriation that the legislature has done in the last 12 years. So it's not what we want, it's not what we need, it's not the over 400 million that would have been there, but given their past practices, they've not appropriated that level, the money that was available. And in fact, the 2092 as recurring revenue and no sweeps could be actually a really good place to start going forward. So that's the bottom line on it, that we took really bad into mixed, and maybe even better than mixed in the end, that we'll be getting an appropriation which should be fairly automatic for the next several years. Your question may be, hey, just because they put in the law that they can't sweep, does that mean they can't? Well, that's correct. Any year they can say notwithstanding and sweep, but we had the current speaker and the president and the next in line speakers and president for 6 years after 2022 all voted for that no sweep language. So we think for the foreseeable future that the no sweeps language will actually, hold as we move over the next 6 to 8 years. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Thank you, Mark, very much for your report. That's very helpful for the board to understand. You're right. It seems like it was a terrible year, and yet we got more than what we've been getting in the last 12 years. So, and hopefully if that continues and those funds don't get swept out like they did this year, we can move forward and plan accordingly. So that would be great. I'm not seeing any raised hands from those that are attending virtually. Cody Powell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to know if we could get a copy of his slides that he had, if those could be emailed out to us after the meeting.
Sounds great. I believe Cheryl has that
Absolutely.
information and should be able to send it out to each of the board members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I want to thank all of the board members that sent letters to our legislators, to the President and Speaker of the House. I believe every bit of the effort that was taken really helped put us in a good way. And I want to thank all of you that made phone calls or sent the emails or sent letters. We actually, I got several calls back from their offices as well as through our delegation. So the people are listening. And so I think we should make sure that we make our voices heard. So thank you very much for doing that.
Chair, just one last thought that, the effort that we've had formally to have a Sadowski effort, we had to really gear it up, in the Great Recession period when they started sweeping all of the funds. And what we found is that there were virtually no legislators who even knew what the Sadowski funds were. And the education effort that has come from that effort and from the grassroots effort, as you're speaking, is there's not any legislator now who doesn't know what Sadowski funds are. They absolutely are aware of them. And, whether they're supportive or not, they know that it's an important issue and one that they have to tread lightly around. Even when, the Lawton Childs Trust Fund is gone. The Sadowski Trust Fund is still there and funded at, 209 and hopefully going up. And I think that shows, the difference in the effort that's been made. And thank you and others for that grassroots support.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. It takes a village. Not seeing any other hands from those that are attending virtually. Are there any other questions regarding the legislative update?
No. Commissioner, this is Cheryl. Mark, I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing up on Capitol Hill. Mark and his group run the FHA for Hillsborough County, doing a great job, and we always appreciate your insight and your expertise. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl for the director's report. Cheryl?
Good morning, board. So glad to be here this morning. Thank you all for your time and everything that you do for affordable housing. We're going to move right into the director's report. I'd like to share with you one of our items that comes off of our 10-point plan, and we've been working in the background with Miss Antoinette Hayes-Triplett from Tampa Hillsborough Homeless Initiative, and she is on the line now to be able to share the shared housing program with you, and it's also a part of her 20-point plan. So without further ado, Ms. Triplett.
Thank you, Ms. Howell. I did send over my slide presentation. I'll make it as brief as possible. If Mr. Brewer could bring it up.
Stand by.
Thank you.
While he's doing that, Antoinette, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, no problem. Sorry for the background. I'm on vacation. So, in a different time zone. So.
Oh my, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Anything for sure. All right. So I am Antoinette Hayes-Triplett. I am the CEO of the Tampa Hillsborough Homeless Initiative. The shared housing is part of our 560 and 560 strategic plan on homelessness. Just before the pandemic, around June 2019, we had a heavy discussion with the former county administrator and really wanted to push the button on how do we continue to reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness. At that time, we had about 660 people sleeping on the streets in Hillsborough County. He said, what would make what you're doing a success? And I told him if we can get it down to under 100 people sleeping on the streets of Hillsborough County. So that left 560 people that we needed to house. And basically we set a point for 560 days. So that's where the name came from, 560 people in 560 days to provide housing to. Following that, a couple of the commissioners, including Commissioner Overman and Commissioner Merman, saw fit to provide seed money for THHI to carry out its strategic plan. Next slide. So this is a little bit about THHI. I will not read all of it. Basically, THHI is the lead entity of the continuum of care for Hillsborough County. There are 26 continuum of care agencies in the state of Florida and over 400 across the country. Our collective job is to develop strategies, work with collaborations to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. Next slide. These are our funding partners, state, federal, and local funding partners. Next slide. Okay. The 560 strategic plan. The purpose is to look at some of the main causes leading to unsheltered homelessness. And some of those things include lack of affordable housing, as we all know, poverty, mental health, also substance abuse, and other items that are also listed. Next slide. Here's some few statistics about our point-in-time count. Every continuum of care across the country is required to conduct a point-in-time count, and this is just how ours look since basically 2014, 2019. Next slide. So I'll go a little bit into shared housing a little bit. Shared housing is one solution out of 10 that are part of the strategic plan. Many of the people that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness are usually living together either in an encampment or in a park. And they fear living on their own because they've developed a community. And shared housing is to keep that community intact. But other things for the shared housing is we wanted to also go into neighborhoods and improve the housing stock in that neighborhood. We also wanted to provide job opportunities, such as construction job opportunity, to people in the community. And the last thing we wanted to work on is building generational wealth. So part of the shared housing plan is to make those that are in the community, make this project available for those in the community so that they can maybe purchase a home and then be able to, with our assistance and the county's assistance through this program, and make the homes available for people that are exiting homelessness. And this will be an income stream for those persons that live in these neighborhoods that we're trying to impact. The goal is to have 50 shared housing programs throughout the community that would provide housing to over 150 people. Most of the shared housing will be single-family homes, 3 or 4, no more than 3 or 4 bedrooms. So we're not looking to do anything 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms. We're not trying to do a boarding house, but we want to really integrate the people that are exiting homelessness into the community. Next slide. And so, as I said before, the 560 Strategic Plan on Homelessness has 10 components, and they're listed here before you. The first one is the Hillsborough County Expungement Clinic. We work really closely with the state's attorney's office. We've done, I believe, 5 or 6 expungement clinics. We had to stop because of the pandemic, but we hope to get started over again. We assist people with getting expungements to their criminal record. We pay the $75 fee. We make it a one-stop shop, so everything is done on the same day. We're in the midst of our second chance job fair. We only bring employers to the event that want to have provide opportunities for people that have blemishes on their criminal record or employment records. And we did the first one virtually. The next one will be done in person. The CASH program, the CASH is an acronym for Community-Wide Affordable Supportive Housing. We provide developers with incentives, financial incentives, to provide housing for those that are chronically homeless that would never be able to get a lease on their own without this assistance to the developers. We usually have a 10 to 15 recapture agreement with that developer that they can't sell the property without paying the money back. The next one is Hotspot Mobile Outreach. We have provided a red van that goes throughout the community. It goes to places that has a increase of homeless people experiencing homelessness in those areas, such as encampments, and work with them and build trust to get them to move into permanent housing. Rapid exit from shelter. We give vouchers to the shelters to make sure that people can move out of the shelters as quickly as possible. We've done this for maybe 2 years now, and it has really been a success. It's been replicated at other places throughout the state. Speed leasing is similar to speed dating, where we bring landlords together with potential renters who are exiting homelessness with their case managers, and we provide incentives for the landlord in that case too. Mainly, we make sure the rent is going to be paid for at least up to a year. Operation Reveille. Operation Reveille is where we bring all resources to the table to make sure that we can exit vets from homelessness. Hopefully this year will be our last Operation Reveille, because we're at the point where we think we can house every homeless vet for a vet. Our shared house, we expect to have an open house for the first 2 shared housing on right around June 1st. It's in its final stage. They're in their final stages of being rehabbed. The first one will be for ladies that are over the age of 55. We saw a real deficit in providing housing for our seniors that have some type of disability. So we're excited about that. And the second will be for veterans that are chronically homeless. The last two parts of the initiative are still waiting to get started. Housing is Healthcare. The Housing is Healthcare initiative is looking to take the HUD money and provide housing as opposed to healthcare and mental health treatment. So we're trying to reallocate our housing money toward housing and find ways to have the healthcare that we're currently paying with housing money, trying to find healthcare funds to pay for healthcare. The Beach House is an acronym for the beginning of the end, abolishing chronic homelessness. We look to put together a permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness. We're looking to do something that looks like a beach house, and it's about 15 bedrooms, 15 bathrooms, and it's for those that would never be able to sign a lease on their own because they have severe mental illness or developmental disabilities that they would never be able to maybe cook on their own or live on their own. It would be similar to the Fisher House that's located on VA hospital properties throughout the country. This concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I will definitely take those. Thank you, Commissioner and Ms. Howe, for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing us up to speed on all the wonderful work you're doing, as well as the program. So it's helpful that for, I think, this board to recognize, what THHI does and how we work alongside of you in the great work that you do. I'm pleased to see, would love to find out, you send us the date or send us the details on the ribbon cutting. We actually just did a ribbon cutting for Mercy Manor, I believe, and that was the site where I believe you and a lot of other folks came together to build the tents at the early part of the pandemic in order to get homeless in a safe place and have access to health care and testing and early on last year. So I just wanted to say thank you too for that effort. But now there's going to be permanent housing there, which is great to see too. But look forward to actually seeing that. Do I have any questions from board members? Sarah Combs, you're recognized.
Yeah, my question is, in regards to your acquisition strategy, are you acquiring properties and then rehabbing them? Or I'm just wondering if that's something that THHI does, or do you just work with second parties to find the housing and work with them on the needs of the housing?
So THHI does not own any property, so we provide an incentive, $70,000 toward acquisition and rehab to the developer / landlord. We did the first two as a pilot project. We have 8 in the wing, and we'll be doing a workshop this fall for not-for-profit agencies and for residents in the community that want to buy a rental property, put $70,000 towards it to help them with the rehab and acquisition of those properties. We did have an RFP out about a couple weeks ago, and we'll have another one out probably mid to late fall.
So one follow-up question to that. So how do you ensure that those properties are staying within that specific, program that they're earmarked for with the landlords? Is that something that is like a 5-year or 10-year, or how are you all ensuring that it stays for that, population that you're targeting?
Thank you. So we assign an agency that have the permanent housing vouchers to that home. So we work with Grace Point and ACTS and other agencies that have permanent housing vouchers. And so they are basically working with the landlords to make sure if someone moves out, they move another person in, and they also provide the funding for the rent.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
That's great. That's great.
Thanks for asking those questions. I should have covered that in my presentation in more detail, so thank you.
Okay. Ms. Jackson? Ms. Sims? Sorry. I'm going to mess that up.
For the benefit
Sims,
of my
yes.
husband.
Ms. Sims.
I just want to go on the record and say, because Miss Antoinette Hayes-Triplett is not going to toot her own horn, that prior to her arrival, Tampa was one of the top 5 jurisdictions in the country for the highest rate of homelessness, Tampa, Hillsborough County. And we were amongst the top 3 for homelessness with women and children. And since she has arrived and put together the strategies and the plans that we see before us today, we can significantly see that Tampa and Hillsborough County have moved in a different direction and no longer have the quote-unquote glory of being recognized as one of the leaders in homelessness, but now is recognized by federal authorities as leaders of changing homelessness for families that have encountered difficulties. And that she has come and brought her extensive knowledge and hit the ground running from 2019 until today to put a plan in place that has drastically resulted in changes for families is a tribute to her leadership, and I clearly believe it ought to be recognized.
Thank you. She certainly deserves those accolades. I agree, absolutely agree. Mr. Pell, you had a question.
Definitely a team approach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question as it relates to the additional incentives for landlords and investors. I think that it's great that a lot of them understand that you are going to guarantee, at least payments through a voucher program. But I've had in the past, just talking from personal experience, where we had an owner that was participating like in the ACTS program, and it was very noble and it was great. And the issue that they ran into at the time was the tenant just causing a lot of damages. And that's where I find a lot of landlords, they're not necessarily concerned about getting their rent paid, but it's whenever someone does move out, or there's issues that are on the property that or in the interior, how do those get handled? Like, those are the questions that I hear about the preservation of the asset, because it's great that the rent gets paid, but what's there in case there something is happen, because folks are moving and transitioning from homelessness, and a lot of times my understanding and what research I've done is a lot of homelessness is caused by mental health issues, and so they just haven't been maybe necessarily simulated back into society. So there's a transition that's there for them, and it's hard. So I think that if that was communicated about, or if there was something that was maybe communicated a little more clearly for landlords, to want to help them accept homeless tenants, in terms of if there's any sort of damages, who's going to help take care of that. They don't have to spend $15,000 out of pocket, for X, Y, and Z. So I didn't know if there was any sort of incentives on that end that's been thought about.
Absolutely. We've worked really closely with Ms. Howell and also Ms. Crosby-Rucker as we developed this strategic plan. And part of, and I didn't go into detail about the cash program, it actually has 4 components. And one of the components is risk mitigation. We will make the landlord whole. Since we put that in place, we've only had one landlord ask. It's been in place about 2 years. Only had one landlord ask for damages beyond the security deposit. So part of the cash program is risk mitigation. We have a set of dollars set aside for that. The landlords that participate in the speed leasing are aware of that and work currently with Bay Area Apartment Association to bring those landlords to the table. But in the coming months, we'll be spreading that out, and we're actually going to be talking about that at our board meeting. How can we maybe get a PSA with some of our local leaders to talk about the strategic plan? We're also going to go to different neighborhoods across Hillsborough County to talk about the strategic plan, so that everyone in the community can be aware of what's going on and how to get resources We've just updated our website to make it really streamlined so that people can also be able to find the information as quickly as possible.
Okay. Well, I just think, just to comment on that, if landlords are a little made more aware of like your risk management, like policies and strategies, I think that's going to, really help to encourage and incentivize, landlords to participate in these programs. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Are there any other questions? Connie Burton, you're recognized.
Yes, and I want to thank Ms. Triplett for her leadership. My concern would be up under the 10-point plan of knowing in terms of the numbers, how many individuals were helped up under, say, the REACH program, the speed leasing program. That would be good for me. And also, if she can dive into how do she see generational wealth being created in some of these undeserved, communities.
Sure.
What is her vision for that? How do we work toward that?
So I'll touch on that. The first thing is that with the shared housing, we plan to provide $70,000 to, out of the 50, we're going to do 10 homes with people that are not developers, that are not not-for-profit organizations, but citizens in the community. $70,000, and there will also be coaching and workshops that go along with that. And so this is an investment property for them, and they should see return on their investment within the first maybe 3 to 4 years of probably being able to pay off that house, probably no later than 5 years, if they put all the income towards paying it off. So we see it as a long-term growth. The other thing is that as we partner with Ms. Howell, is to make sure that as she's working on the big development, we also have part of the cash program is where she sets aside 10% of the units in affordable housing to go into our portfolio so that we can make the agencies aware of these availabilities. So the cash program has four components, and one that talked about the developer incentives, the other one talked about risk mitigation, but also the set-aside units that Ms. Howell has put forth. And then the other one is gap incentive. So if a person doesn't qualify for anything and they become homeless, maybe they have a PhD but became homeless and now they're back working, but they need that gap funding to help them get into housing, and they're overqualified for everything else, and we can come in on the back end and help them get into housing. And Ms. Burton, you have one other question.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. It's great to see that we have this partnership with THHI and the great work you do, and thank you very, very much. Yeah, I think it's critically important that we do address those that find themselves without a roof over their head. And what comes with that individual that doesn't have a roof over their head is a lot of pain and suffering in our community. And so the good news is we're addressing that, and thank you very, very much for the work that you're doing, Ms. Hayes-Triplett. I really, truly appreciate it. I don't see any raised hands, so I'm assuming I'm not getting any questions from the audience online. So with that, we'll turn it back over to Ms. Howell.
I have just one thing to add.
Okay, go ahead.
Before I go. The main challenge we're having is we'd love to expand the risk mitigation to more of the population that we're currently providing it for. So we'll be looking for funding to expand risk mitigation to everyone that's exiting homelessness. So that's going to take a little resources to do that. At our last speed leasing, there were over 100 properties brought to the table with only 35 families participating. And we want to expand the number of families that can participate by having open up risk mitigation funds to everyone that's exiting. So that's my last comment.
Well, send me the notice. I'll get the word out. And I think everyone on the board will probably help with that effort. So get us the details the next time you have it, and we'll reach out to the communities, to our churches, to our community centers, and various different other organizations to make sure that you've got more than 35 there. So I have a feeling you'll end up with more than we have room for, but that's okay. It'll be good to make sure that the folks are aware of it. Did you have anything else that you wanted to offer?
No, thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much for being here.
Enjoy vacation.
Yeah, especially while you're on vacation, so thank you. Ms. Howe?
Yes, thank you so much, Antoinette. I was about to go into panic mode on Thursday when she said she was leaving on vacation. I said, can we still count on you for the AHAB meeting? And so thank you so much for your time. I hope this puts some of the anxiety, some of the fears about serving these subpopulations to rest. Some of the things that Mr. Cody brought up, some of the concerns that Ms. Combs brought up, and really the accolades that Ms. Jackson Sims, and some of the concerns from Ms. Burton. I certainly appreciate it. We work closely together on these items, planning out, what type of things we need to do, what kind of policies, what kind of lures, what kind of mortgages need to be in place, what kind of incentives need to be in place so that we can cover all areas. And so I just want to thank Antoinette as a colleague and a partner in this field. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to move forward right now with Ms. Ziegler. And Ms. Ziegler is our Director of Social Services, and she's going to share about the ERAP funding, and that's the rental assistance funding. Thank you so much, Audrey, for joining us this morning. And without further ado, please.
So thank you, everybody, so much for having me today. And I'd like to say thank you for the invitation, but I actually invited myself. So and listening to the meeting, listening to the agenda, I don't know why we aren't participating in these meetings more. So it kind of worked out for us. And thank you, Commissioner, for your time today. I know this program is near and dear to your heart. It's the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or we call it ERAP. So you may also hear it in the community as R3, because this is our third phase of assisting households that have been financially impacted by COVID-19. So I do have some subject matter experts on the line with me. That's Dr. Wint, and I believe Angela Madero are on. So if there are any specific questions, I want them to be able to answer those for you. And I also want them to give you the contact information of how you can reach our call center and how you can find us online to find the application. So we have done so much outreach for this program. You've probably seen it everywhere. So if you haven't heard of it, I'll be very surprised that you haven't heard of it. But what I want to do is really keep the message fresh. And as you have families you're working with, household individuals you're working with that present as being past due in their shelter obligations, that you keep this program fresh in your mind and you make referrals to the program often. So we did expand the benefit, as the commissioner mentioned. She kind of stole my thunder early on by pitching the program, but again, you're going to hear it twice today. So early on, we did have a cap, and we were expecting to assist households up to $7,500 with their past due rent. And what we recognized is that we weren't getting a lot of attention with that threshold. So we said, why not just expand it out to the U.S. Treasury maximum, which allows us to pay up to 12 months past due rent, as long as the first month is not before March of 2020, and that's when the pandemic initial deadline is for beginning any impact with COVID-19. There's also a Tampa electric benefit, and we're trying to exhaust up to $40 million that we have. The county had about 30 and the city had about 10, and we've merged that together, and it's been a very nice partnership, because you can imagine customers or residents in the community trying to figure out where they live, where they apply, what the criteria is. If the criteria were different contact information, different applications. So we quickly reached out to the city and asked them if we could do them a favor and administer their bucket of funds. So I think that's been a huge enhancement for the public. They've been able to go to one website, one call center, and begin the application. But what we want to do is make sure that people apply for the program and get that past due rent tackled so that their landlord's made whole, and then they don't carry those balances forward. And we're also going to allow residents to apply over and over again until the funding is exhausted. So let's say someone may have gotten a 2 or 3 month benefit, and then now maybe in August or September they find themselves in arrears again, or maybe there's 1 month that they couldn't pay because something happened with their job, they're welcome to continue to apply. And they, at every application, they'll be able to apply for their past due amount, the current month that they're applying, and then one prospective month. So that really is keeping people housed. And if you go back to the intent of the program, two things. One is to make landlords whole and make sure that we help them recover from the moratoriums. And two is to make sure people aren't evicted. So we're working really, really hard on making sure that those two things are addressed. The other thing we know is that come next month, the CDC's moratorium is being lifted. So anyone out there that may have been confused and wanted to pursue an eviction for their past due tenant and didn't, may now have that kind of green light to do so. So please keep this in your toolbox. You do not have to be a subject matter expert. Refer, and let us do the hard work. And I don't want anybody to even self-determine eligibility. If they look at the website and they're kind of not sure where they fit, have them call us, have them start the application. I talk super fast, so I will pause now if there's any questions, and I'll let Dr. Went kind of show herself so you can see who's going to answer your questions. And we're available. And again, we can assist landlords with their questions in addition to any tenants.
Thank you, Audrey, and there's absolutely no way that I could actually steal your thunder because the work that she's done and her whole team has done in the last year and several months has been amazing. Never hesitating, always returning calls and reaching out and working out their best for citizens that are in need. So I want to personally tell you, thank you very much. I didn't get a chance to say on Friday during the Public Service Awards that you are one of my heroes and you were celebrating everybody else, but I truly appreciate the hard work that you put in this year to create a stellar program.
Customer service is our main goal. We can't assist everyone because we do have to live within the guidelines, but Commissioner, you're right. We take our job serious. Most of us said as kids, when we grow up, we want to help somebody, and I'm fortunate to work with a group of people that actually do get to help people every day. So we take that very serious, and if you ever get a customer assistance complaint about us, it's because someone wasn't eligible, not because Hillsborough County doesn't take treating them fairly and with dignity very, very serious. So thank you for that, and we always pass on these comments to our staff, because I let you all know I'm the messenger, but the staff does the whole work.
It's great. Ms. Burton, do you have a question?
Not so much of a question, but a concern. And I know that the director, the manager, I don't know if she's a director, but congratulations to their staff. One of the biggest problems is the aftermath of people that have been evicted. And the funding, none of the funding take care of that. So is there anything on the horizon that she sees that will circle back to that, since the moratoriums are being lifted? And there's a ton of people that have been evicted that those resources will be able to help in the future.
Ms. Burton, that's a great question, and nice to see you again. I think I can see you. I'm not positive, but nice to hear your voice. That's actually a great question, and that's actually something that staff is looking into. How do we pivot somewhat in some of our funding and allow for relocation assistance so that people can get reestablished? One of the things we'll have to work closely with is our landlords, and having them, kind of be forgiving and eliminate or disregard that eviction that may be on someone's record and take a chance on someone, knowing that the county will sponsor a huge part of their rent so that they don't fall behind again. So that is an opportunity that we're going to look at. And for some reason, if we're not able to look at it right now, there are ERAP funding too. It's a second level of funding, and it's quite a bit of money that we're looking at pursuing. And I think the deadline to apply for that is this week. So if we can't tackle that with ERAP 1 because of the U.S. Treasury guidance and kind of crossing paths, we'll definitely be looking at that in ERAP 2, which will start sooner rather than later. And that'll be a service that we make sure and tackle.
Hey, good morning.
One of the issues with the program, I'm sorry.
Good. I saw you just responded to.
Who's speaking? Who else is speaking?
Mr. Hollis? Mr. Hollis, if you can mute yourself, please.
One of the issues with the ERAP funding is that the eligibility guideline is limited to 80%
Bob is up at the farm, but he's supposed to return tomorrow, and I'm gonna tell him that.
Oh, just a moment,
You've got
please,
some
Audrey.
bidders on the
Mr. Burrow,
project
could
that
you
you'd like to
please
open
mute
up.
Mr. Hollis?
Yes, he's been muted.
Thank you.
So, what I was mentioning is that I know our county administrator is going to be working hard and reaching out to some of the legislative people to see if there's any opportunity for the ERAP funding to expand their eligibility threshold maybe to 120% AMI. Because we know there's a lot of households impacted, and for us to limit it to specific households with specific income at a time during COVID may not be the best opportunity. So we're looking forward to those expansions. One being hopefully the income eligibility bracket, and for sure, Ms. Burton, looking at how we can assist with relocation. I think that's a really good mention that you had, and something that we're talking about.
That's great. That's right. I'm unable to see the folks on the screen any longer, so you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow up to Ms. Burton's question, will any of these funds be allowed to be used for people who have already been through the eviction process and maybe they were however many months behind? Can we use some of that money to help them pay off a prior eviction that maybe is on like their credit report? Because I mean, we're not going to be able to wipe away an eviction because that's going to be on their record for 5 or 7 years. But at least if they don't show that they owe an apartment community or a landlord who has filed with a collections company, that's not really going to necessarily ding their should help their credit score.
Yeah, that's a great question, and Ms. Madero and I had this conversation last week because we did have one who was applying for a past lease that they had owed on. Unfortunately, the U.S. Treasury guidance is written in such a way that this program is to evict or prevent eviction and sustain housing. So it's not a program to protect someone's credit per se. And I know what you're saying though, because if you protect someone's credit and it kind of clears the path to then help them be rehoused. But the way the guidance is written, it does not allow for that at this time. They have been, throughout this program for emergency rental assistance, program phase 1, which started in March, they have released 3 sets of U.S. Treasury guidance. And with each set, things change and get a little bit more lax and a little bit more lenient towards the applicant situation. So as they figure out, where there are a bunch of people within a certain circumstance, they are making those provisions. So that's something that we'll definitely take a look at as these new U.S. Treasury guidances are released.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, since those funds can't be used for that, is there anything that we can do, like on our level or on the BOCC level, to look at creating something that could help folks in that situation?
Are you asking me that question?
Commissioner, this is
Go ahead,
Cheryl. I can
Cheryl.
chime in on that one.
Okay.
Yes. So typically, Mr. Powell, when services are rendered for that type of activity, it's tied to a housing placement result. And so for Audrey's program, it's more prevention. For our programs, it falls in the area of accessibility. And so if we are not able to tie the family to accessibility, it's very, very difficult for us to be able to justify utilizing that funding on a family if the family remains in their current state. And so if there was a way to be able to work with the landlord so that the family could then rent from that landlord again, I'm sure that might be a path forward. But if the family remains in the current state, it typically, a situation like that is pretty bleak. It's pretty bleak. We need to be able to make that kind of impact on the family to justify spending the funds.
Okay, great. Did you have any other further questions, Mr. Powell? You recognized?
Oh, well, thank you for your presentation, first of all. My question is, when you said don't self-determine, I know sometimes when people are really having a difficult time and the moratorium lifting, I know they're going to feel the stress of everything sort of coming down on them at once. I'm curious about the application process and the ease of reaching out and accessing the ERAP assistance.
I'll be happy to answer that question. So anyone who's interested in applying for assistance through the R3 program can actually apply on a website. The website address is hcflgov.net/R3 home help. And the reason why we ask that people do not self-determine their eligibility is because a lot of times people determine that they're ineligible based on information that they have or that they perceive is a disqualification criteria, but we found that those individuals were not disqualified had they just come through applying initially. So we're asking just if someone thinks that they benefit from the program, go ahead and apply. We will make the determination for them to determine their eligibility. And if they are having issues or unable to navigate the system, we do have a call center available to address those questions as well. That number is 866-375-9114.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. I appreciate that information. That's really important because, I mean, our office gets a lot of calls, and they're like, we're stuck, we need help. And that's part of the reason why I'm so proud of this particular department, because when we make those referrals frequently, we find that people are able to get the help that they need. So thank you for that. Mark, you're recognized.
I just want to say that as a member of the apartment industry, what we're trying to do is work with residents who are confronted with evictions. And most of those evictions are those for people who are just not following the rules, not being good neighbors, destroying the property, and try to counsel them that they don't want to do that. They want to be a good neighbor. This is going to keep a roof over their heads. And if it does come to eviction, those in our industry we're trying to get them to do only the Part A, only the eviction itself, and not the financial side, because you're not going to get blood out of a stone. And so we try to at least release that impact, because they're not going to recover anything anyway. So while we can't do anything about the eviction because the person technically has brought that on themselves despite counseling and everything else, we can help with their credit as far as owing a collection agency. And we've actually contacted 2 collection agencies that we've worked with that have and have written off significant balances that these collection agencies only collect maybe 2% anyway. So to sit and hurt people for the money you're not going to collect anyway is kind of silly. So those amounts are being written off, and the collection agencies, the attorneys who do that, are reporting that. We're insisting that they report that to the credit bureaus so that the person's score improves a little bit, so that when they can get their act together as far as behavior and those kind of things, then they've got a good shot at getting housing. Our folks are also really not using the standard models like they used to. They're actually looking at every application on a case-by-case basis and saying, okay, if this person was evicted, what's the story? Did they lose their job? Was it because of COVID? Was it what? And so people are getting the full understanding and they're getting the full opportunity to secure safe and affordable housing, despite whatever conditions they may have had.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Ms. Burton, you're recognized.
I would just like to go back to Audrey, but one thing that we're discovering in our communities that landlords has used this whole COVID, not being able to pay the rent as a backdoor to evict just because. And that need to be put out. Some of them are nasty and cutthroats and see a way to, use their properties now to get a greater rental cost, But I want to ask Ms. Ziegler, in terms of the courts, have they been willing, do they have any relationships with the courts? I did hear once that the Children's Board had a program that if people that was suffering from eviction, if they went through some type of counseling type of workshop, then the courts were willing to forgive or to expunge some of those evictions. So I want to know, had she heard anything of that nature or anything that they could explore? Maybe you as a commissioner, I don't know if staff could do it, to enter into a dialogue with the courts that would look at ways in which, if we was really wanting to restore families during this period that we just come out of, how could we work to do the expungement from the top end so we wouldn't be so reliant on landlords to do the right thing?
Right, understood. We're actually looking at a variety of ways of addressing eviction prevention. Not that it hasn't already been filed, but there was legislation that was actually trying to get through this session that would allow for a eviction mediation program to be able to get the landlord and the tenant together to try and solve for a better outcome when it comes to both for the landlord and for the tenant. But to your point, you are on completely accurate that with Hillsborough County's lack of housing and a fire-hot real estate market, unfortunately, and not so much with the apartment association, but with single-family home landlords, we're finding that non-renewal is an issue, because right now rents, just market rents, are at a level that I haven't seen ever, at very, very high rates that make it almost impossible for somebody to find a place to live. That is making the AMI, or average median income, even at the 50% to 80% level. Rents are very, very high, especially in the city. But once an eviction has already been filed and ruled, it would take an expungement process. And I don't know I doubt seriously, if I were on vacation, I'd still be on the line, but if Ms. Triplett did talk about an expungement clinic, I don't know if that included, being able to address an eviction. But it would seem as if we're allowed to make that happen, it would be a good effort to put into place to assist people in getting their lives back together, assuming that it wasn't for, massive damages, which is what Mark was talking about, or Cody was asking about. If you have a tenant that had a financial situation happen to them, which happens, that put them in a situation where they were getting evicted, that's one issue. If they were getting evicted because they completely destroyed the house, that's a different issue. And so that would take a program to try and mitigate that. And I don't know that we currently have that in place. And we are looking for ways that we can address evictions that are coming as a result of the financial cost associated with this pandemic, for sure.
Can I just follow up real quick?
Sure.
The reason I want to bring that up is because, not even as an attorney, but just trying to serve on the NAACP housing subcommittees, we have gone through the Zoom court hearing where people was being evicted for, just minor offenses. But because they don't have the ability to hire attorneys, some landlords just feel like that's the green light to go. And just having dialogue with the courts have, dismissed at least 3 cases that I'm aware of. So I'm just hoping that the county don't find itself on the back end that, yes, there was funding to stop, but now we got a ton of evictions that is going to produce homelessness and other social issues that we can see how we can get on the front end of it as a county.
Agreed. And I look forward to continuing this because we're looking at it, recognizing that when this moratorium was going to be lifted, we were going to be seeing a higher number than we want to see. So, or if there were no ERAP funding. So, I mean, the good news is we have some tools. The challenge is we don't have all of them. So we're still working on them. And I appreciate the work that you're doing in the court system, Connie. That's excellent. Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on Ms. Burton's comments as well and let you know that over the past year, we've really been working with residents, holding community conversations in the midst of COVID, really meeting residents where they are to talk about these issues that are plaguing our community and really get to the root of how are we helping our residents and meeting them where they are. And the first thing that we realized is we have to meet them where they are. We have to build that trust. It's very, very hard to allow a resident to open up and really explain what's really going on unless we have some sort of trust. So, you know, the other thing we looked at as we talk about the evictions and what's really happening with these landlords and how they are unlawfully evicting these families and putting them into the streets, we realized there's a huge education component that is missing. People don't understand their rights and they don't understand where to go. They don't know how to navigate the systems. You know, the other piece of it is to understand there's a lot of funding out there, but how do you access that funding in a environment that's so confusing and, you know, where do I go first and how do I apply for this and what paperwork and I don't have a printer and I don't have internet and I can't send in a copy. All of these are really challenges that, you know, prevent our families from getting the help that they need. And I'm not saying there's not help out there, there is, but, you know, how do we really create a place-based program to be able to help residents where they are? And so that's the question that we've had for the last year. And we really dug into it about 6 months ago because every day it felt like we had a family come into our center and ask us about these questions. And we were able to give them a number or a website, but that's not meeting them where they are. That's not really helping the family and looking at a holistic approach to helping these individuals. We looked at, you know, the legislation that was being filed. United Way is doing a great job cheering that on, but it didn't pass in the way that we had hoped it to. And so we talked about creating a program to be able to really identify and help these individuals for specifically evictions. And the piece that is the biggest component is the legal component. So we're launching a program that really focuses on the eviction defense specifically. We're partnering with Bay Area Legal Services to be able to help these residents and really counsel them on what your rights are before time. And then the other component of that is, hey, we have a housing navigator that can meet you where you are, talk about your specific situation and figure out what funding source. We have probably access to 5 funding pots, right? And they're all different and they all have different red tape levels. But how do we meet individuals where they are and get them through that process quickly so that way we can ensure that they are stable? And then we deal with the crisis at hand, right? If the crisis is something you have to fix immediately, then we can focus on all the other things that are happening. And so, you know, we're doing this with United Way, Bay Area Legal Services. Florida Blue is also helping with this. It is a pilot, but it's really focused on a place-based approach to really helping the individual where they are. And then the key is to prevent the eviction. Now, that's not always going to happen, but the key is to prevent it. So if you can prevent the eviction, keep them in their home, and then work on the other services that are needed and wrap those services around them, then that not only puts the individual in a better position, but also the family as well. So I just want to say that these are the conversations that are happening on the community level, and we really have to listen intently to figure out how are we reaching these individuals and how are we helping them with what they actually need. And I think that legal component is something that is far overdue because people don't know what they know. I mean, I'm lost in this system, to be quite honest. So, you know, we need someone that they can trust. And again, it's meeting them where they are and then pulling in the services. So we're hopeful to be able to launch that. We're hiring a navigator right now, a housing navigator, and then we'll see how it goes. But sometimes you just have to start.
Right. Thank you very much. And one of the benefits of the Tenant Bill of Rights is the information piece that's required to be given to tenants. And so that piece does have a series of links and telephone numbers to assist with that. issue, but you're right. It's the face-to-face, or at least the hands-on type of guidance is time well spent, because it does help people navigate something that's rather complex. Can you just, Ms. Jackson?
I want to agree with what Sarah just brought forward, but I think that we have a mechanism that's a county-wide mechanism that could be put to use in this regard. The problem is that there is no funding that is being provided to it, but Hillsborough County has a number of county-wide housing counseling agencies that on a daily basis, their business is to sit down with individuals and families to assist them with housing issues. And the legal component has been one of the largest components that they have not been able to get enough help from. Bay Area Legal needs additional financial support in order to bring more attorneys on to be able to address the cases that are out there. We have not had funding go up for them as the number of issues have gone up. So if we could assist the organizations that are out there that are designed already to do this by providing them with the appropriate funding that is coming down the pike now, because this is an issue that is going to grow within our community as a result of COVID. And Ms. Burton is right. We can get ahead of this if we stop right now and note that it's going on, and even move from the UTC area to a county-wide initiative that looks at every component of our county and has individuals who are known for working with Hispanics, where a Hispanic family may feel more comfortable in going in and speaking with someone who is of their culture and language to explain cultural issues that are going on. So we have an opportunity here, and if we can place this as a future business item and ask our county staff on how we might be able to put those components together to be able to get ahead of this issue, so that we don't see that we have more families that we're having to refer over to our homelessness component.
Right, excellent. So is that a staff request?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much. Mr. Rosenwasser.
A couple of things. Number one, thank you, Commissioner, for pointing out that the new regulations, the new statute, does require the landlord to advise the resident that there are options available to them. We as a company, and I keep trying to push us as an industry, but we as a company have both an English and Hispanic, or Spanish-speaking person, and I call him a person of compassion, not somebody who, not an employee who is a stickler for the rules, but somebody who can actually sit and listen to the issue and provide residents with assistance. And we've created, there are a number of websites and that we provide them with lists of it and things like that that are available. Because the last thing I would hope that the last thing a landlord wants to do is evict a family, a resident, a single resident or a family. There are costs related to that eviction and for getting that apartment ready for the next people that could be avoided if you work with residents who are running into a problem. And as was said, the face-to-face is the most effective way to do it. We try to get our people to go out into the field and speak to these residents and say, okay, here are the options. And as far as the affordable housing, this is the first year in as far back as I can remember, 40 years, that we've taken the rents per the chart that is put out by the state, and where, you know, you go through the calculation of allowable rent and you reduce it by utility costs and all that other stuff, where we have gone substantially below the allowable amount to make sure people can afford housing. And this year, the rates went up very significantly. And we've basically said, no, we can't do that. Although the state's given us the authority to do it, you know, hitting somebody with a $75 increase when they can't afford their current rents is just unreasonable. And so, you know, we've limited those amounts and just say, okay, you know, we're getting the appreciation in the real estate. We have to take that into consideration on the income side, and hopefully more and more of those in my industry, you know, will follow that lead. But you know, we have to keep people and families in homes.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the association's conversations about those things and their help. Again, it's a combination of apartments and single-family home landlords. And there are some things that I'm looking long-term to address when it comes to the leases that are offered by real estate investment trusts that are quite different than the Florida standard language.
Yes.
So I'll be looking into that because I think it's something that does need to be addressed for the citizens of not only Hillsborough County, but of Florida in general. But not there yet. Not there yet.
Yeah, those REIT leases are very, very, very different and not always as resident friendly.
Correct, correct. And I do believe that needs to be addressed. Well, Ms. Ziegler, you have gotten us all fired up on this particular issue. And I do agree. I look forward to the future item to talk about how do we address the eviction possible tsunami that we're going to be seeing as this moratorium falls. And we have been monitoring the evictions. They haven't skyrocketed already. I mean, they did come down last fall. We expected to see them go up. They're not outside of the range of what we usually see in terms of evictions. But I anticipate seeing that change. So we want to address that at the next meeting.
And if I could point out, the unfortunately, landlords are filing them. Landlords are preparing the documents and unfortunately waiting for the moratorium to end. So that day is going to come. We've got to get the message out that let's work it out now before those documents get filed.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you very much for that. Ms. Howell, I'm going to go back to our agenda items, if at all possible.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. And Ms. Ziegler, is there anything else you'd like to add, or are there any additional questions for our team?
I want to add one thing, Ms. Howell. Thank you again for having me and letting me crash the party today. I appreciate it. And you know, as you all highlighted, that this is a huge issue, and the only tool I offer you today in our toolbox is financial assistance. So keep that in mind. And what we don't want is anybody impacted by COVID-19 to be evicted based on a financial, you know, being past due. We can address that issue, and this group takes on the bigger issues, you know, as we face them. That will be certainly helpful, and we can get this money in the community. I will add that Ms. Madero did work with the clerk's office last week. And as landlords reach out to begin to file these evictions, they will have an emergency rental assistance program link so that hopefully they can pause before they do that, read about the program, apply or register as a landlord vendor of the program, and then begin to invite their tenants to apply for the program to determine eligibility before proceeding with the eviction filing. So I'm not sure how many, but it was an opportunity we couldn't pass up to maybe try, you know, before June hits. So thank you again for having me. I'm always available for questions. You can reach me through Ms. Howell, any commissioner, my direct email, call me. As Commissioner Overman mentioned, we respond in record or lightning time. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be happy to help.
All right. Thanks again, Audrey. And to the board, I just want to say, you know, I certainly appreciate all three of the speakers that we had this morning. Just three dynamic thought leaders from different areas of service. And I will move right along. We have our officer elections this morning, and so it's time for us to take care of some board business. And Ms. Nancy Takamori, are you on the line?
Yes, good morning, Cheryl. Good morning, board members. I'm actually here in person, Cheryl. As you know, we have 2 officer positions on the AHAB, the chair and vice chair. And at your April meeting, we received 2 nominations, one for Commissioner Overman to continue as chair and a nomination for Mr. Rosenwasser to continue as vice chair. At this time, we can accept additional nominations from the floor. So I would ask you now, are there any additional nominations for the position of chair? And I am unable to see any hands from any virtual attendees. Can you tell Natasha? No hands for chair?
I don't see any hands raised. Is there anyone that wants to make you just speak up if you're interested in making a nomination? We did take nominations last meeting, but we're looking for additional nominations for the position
We're opening the
of chair.
opportunity for additional nominations prior to taking the vote.
Excellent.
So
thank
it
you.
sounds like there are no additional nominations for chair, so we'll close that. Are there any additional nominations for the position of vice chair? And hearing none.
I would like,
wait.
I'd like to make a nomination for vice chair, Cody Powell.
Okay, and we previously had a nomination of
Mr. Rosenwasser.
Rosenwasser.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, seeing and hearing no additional nominations, we'll close the nominations for vice chair. Now we will have the vote for the position of chair, and since it's only Commissioner Overman, we can do the roll call vote, please.
Overman?
Yes.
I think you can vote for yourself, right?
I do, I guess. I didn't say no, so yes.
Rosenwasser?
Yes.
Burton?
Yes.
Abel?
Yes.
Powell? Yes. Jackson Sims?
Yes.
Combs?
Yes.
Lott? Okay, we lost Mayor Lott.
I think we lost.
Hollis?
Oh, we had muted Mr. Hollis earlier. Is
Mr. Brewer, is Mr. Hollis still muted?
He is.
Yes, Lee, I'll meet him right now. He should be unmuted now.
Yeah.
Mr. Hollis?
I was unable to unmute, yes.
Okay. The motion carried 8-0.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And at this time, we will take the vote for vice chair. The 2 candidates are Mr. Rosenwasser and Mr. Powell. So we'll do this by roll call vote. And when it's your turn to vote, just please indicate who you're voting for. Okay. Thank you.
Overman?
Rosenwasser.
Mr. Rosenwasser?
Rosenwasser.
Burton?
Rosenwasser.
Abel?
Powell.
Mr. Powell? Ms. Jackson Sims?
Rosenwasser.
Sarah Combs?
Powell.
Mr. Hollis?
Rosenwasser.
Based on the votes, it looks like Mr. Rosenwasser will be the vice chair. We have a vote of 5 for Mr. Rosenwasser and 3 for Mr. Powell.
Excellent. Thank you very much for handling that. And thank you, Mr. Powell, for accepting the nomination and for your continued service as a board member. And thank you, Mr. Rosenwasser, for stepping up for your nomination for vice chair. With that, Ms. Howell, could you bring forward the description of the agenda items, or we could just, they are in your agenda, in your packet.
Right, we have a list of our recently approved Board of County Commissioner agenda items. All are pretty atypical. They have been included in your packets for your review. No items are really out of the ordinary at this time. We also have our Affordable Housing Service report that is included in your packet. We have the federal, state, local grant updates. I do want to say that with the American Recovery Plan, there are going to be some additional dollars that are coming out to the local governments. We are waiting on allocation and guidance on these dollars, and so that should be coming out very, very soon. And we also have our monthly newsletter. And I want to say that we have featured this month New Life Village. And New Life Village is one of those communities that service specialized populations. And they have senior populations living with or caring for younger children that were a part of the legal system. And some of them was family placement and others were not. And so it's really a way to be able to care for affordable housing while caring for our citizens as well. And so it's a beautiful program, and we're doing a couple of projects out there. And we're gonna have New Life Village come and speak to the board about the variety of work that they do. They do some awesome work in their communities, just as many of you do. And at this time, we don't have any future business items. And so that concludes my portion, Commissioner.
Thank you. Actually, New Life having a ribbon cutting this month?
Yes, yes, they are.
I believe that is the May 26th. At 9 a.m. and a ribbon cutting at 10:30. So any of you that have the ability to attend, ribbon cuttings are always fun. But this is really a ribbon cutting for their new splash pad that they're offering for the children that live there. So if you have the time, I'll make sure that you get this information you can put it on your calendar to attend.
If I may add, I was involved for some time with New Life, and that was a failed apartment community, and much of the site work, in fact, all of the site work, the roads, the lights, the plumbing connections, everything is already in, and they are working very hard to increase the size of that facility building by building because it serves not only families in need, but seniors in need. And the work that they do together is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I've toured the community, and it is quite impressive what's happening there. It truly is creating new life for families. So it's really exciting to see what's happening there, and a perfect model for replication. If we could do that all over the place, it'd be great.
It is. And I have a correction, Commissioner. It's DACO that's featured this month. New Life Village was featured last month. I guess they really were on my mind because of the ribbon cutting this year. And so we have so many wonderful things that's going on all over Hillsborough County. And I encourage AHAB board members to come out and support our organizations and see some of the great work that's happening as well.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Ms. Combs, you're recognized.
Yes, I just wanted to see if we can get an update on the land RFP that's been scheduled to go out, as well as an update if they're going to be certifying new CHODOs for this fiscal year.
We are going to go through a process where we're certifying new CHODOs. We're waiting for additional home dollars to come out because we want to be able to include those dollars within that RFP. And in terms of the land, there's a process that we're going through. So we're adding a new property to the land that is slated under affordable housing. And so we have to go through the resolution first. And so we have already begun that process. And so the new property, I want to say, has to go through a public hearing first. and then we come back where it's officially slated under affordable housing, and then we go through the RFP process. So we are in process, Sarah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd also like to get an update on the, just for conversation for the board, on the community land trust. That did go out to RFP?
It did, yes, ma'am. It did go out to RFP. We have closed that RFP process, and I want to say the COT agreement has gone to the board for approval.
Excellent.
And I want to say that was this past Wednesday.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I wanted to make sure we got that one on the list and made some progress there, because I think it's critically important that we make some efforts to move that forward, which we've been doing. It's just, I think everybody's been a little busy. A lot of good things going on. Any other future business items that we'd like to discuss or bring to future agendas? All right, I don't see any hands and hearing none.
I do have one other issue, Commissioner. And so right now, when we look at affordable housing, only 20% of affordable housing is provided through any type of subsidy program. 80% of affordable housing is provided through the market system. And so while we're looking at people losing their homes, while we're looking at many of the risks that are involved in our communities and with our residents that are vulnerable, we really want to look at the greatest part of our affordable housing inventory, and really that lies with the I want to say the properties that really are generated out of the market. And so we don't have a really good understanding of how many properties they really are. That's really considered affordable housing by nature of what they pay for those properties, not by any type of subsidy or investment, public investment. And we really want to see if we can get some research students to come in to take a look at that, to provide for the board a really good breakout of what's available, and then outline some of the actions that we can do to really kind of keep many of these properties in the affordable housing coffer.
Excellent,
And
excellent.
so I'm speaking about the naturally occurring affordable housing.
Naturally occurring affordable housing, that's excellent. And with that, I'm going to ask if Natasha will send to the board the link from Hart's TOD study. They're doing an amazing amount of work on the research on transit-oriented development. The last 2 weeks ago, part of their workshop really addressed how affordable housing plays a part in transit-oriented development. It was a great update on what we have in the way of opportunity to link transit and affordable housing. The language is, anything you do with affordable housing is always complex. But they really did break down and isolate and illustrate some of the challenges that we have here in Hillsborough County, and offered a good dialogue on how our work in affordable housing can marry up to the work that's being done in transit. And then I'm working with county staff on looking at the ways that our comprehensive plan and our zoning laws work together. It's a great conversation. I anticipate that we'll actually have a full presentation on that. Thank you. Natasha's knocking her head, yes. We'll have a full presentation on that, possibly the next board meeting. So if you have an opportunity to watch it, and there are some workshops this week that Hart's TOD workshops outreach are occurring this week. So if you go to their website and find those outreach notices and have time to attend this week in the evenings, that's available for your participation. And Ms. Howell, do you have anything else?
Yes, I'll reach out to Professor Strom, who works for UCF and also volunteers on our AHAB board, to get some additional information on our NOAA efforts and how we may be able to further this conversation.
Excellent.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
As an active member of the apartment industry, if there are situations with apartment communities that people on this board want to bring to my attention, I am more than happy to speak to apartment owners and managers to try to mitigate and resolve some of those situations before they get to the point of eviction and things like that. I'll do it personally, and for those of you who don't know, I'm a past president of both the Bay Area Apartment Association and the Florida Apartment Association, but also past chairman of the board of the National Apartment Association. So a lot of people know my name and take my calls, and if I can help mitigate anything, my number is available through Ms. Howell's office, or I'll be happy to give it to you.
Okay, great. Board members, please remember Sunshine and go through Ms. Howell's office if you have any contacts that Mr. Rosenwasser can reach out to on that particular issue. So and just be very careful. We do respect our sunshine laws and don't want to get in sunshine trouble. So, Natasha.
Commissioner, I just wanted to add to the record that we did receive an email from Councilman Goods. He had a family emergency this morning, so he should be excused for this meeting.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Any other comments before we adjourn? Seeing none, thank you very much from everyone. Meeting adjourned.